Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Baat Kardi. My name is Abbas, for those of you joining for the very first time. Uh, Today's topic is going to be something I have talked about a bit in the past in passing, but I hadn't really ever thought about it being its own dedicated topic. But something inspired me to actually talk about this, and that is that yesterday, during my class, we had a guest speaker from the Citizens UK coming on, Miss Fiona Meldrum. And among the various topics that we discussed yesterday, the overarching theme, or rather, one of the overarching questions that she had posed to the class was, what do you want your legacy to be? Now, if you have been listening for some time, you would know that I've talked about my legacy in the past. I've talked about my aspirations for what I hope the future will hold. I've talked about what I would like to leave behind. And this is me going to be this is basically going to be me being very vulnerable about my aspirations, and in some capacity it might come off as being vain or even egotistical to some. But you know, this is just who I am. And yeah, it is what it is, so we started the session with her asking a question, it was basically an exercise going with the question, what's the headline for your obituary, or what would it say on your tombstone? For those unaware, an obituary is basically when an article or a post or something is written for you, either in like a newspaper or a magazine or a blog site, whatever have you, after your passing. Unsurprisingly, I had a very good idea of what I wanted to answer for both questions fairly quickly. And it seemed like the other people in my class were struggling a little bit. And fair enough, I mean, I don't think anyone spends as much time thinking about this as I do. And it's actually good that they don't spend as much time thinking about this, because I unfortunately think a lot about my own mortality and, how much or how little time we have in life. And I feel like it's really colored my opinion on the things I want to do and the things I want to say and where I want to be when all is said and done, wherever that may be. So, um, what I went with in class was so the headline for my obituary would be something along the lines of story maker and filmmaker passes away peacefully with family after latest Oscar win. And the Oscar thing was like a really fun thing that I just wanted to add to make it like less sad. But the way I see it is that if things maybe, work out in the best possible way and life sort of works itself out, I can continue to tell stories. My films actually somehow make it mainstream, and I get, I get worldwide recognition for my work. And I don't know, like maybe this is completely wishful thinking, right? It's very out there because the Oscars are like a completely different thing altogether, and what I'm doing right now is indie art films on YouTube and sometimes Instagram. So it's a very out there thing. And yeah, I mean, you never know, right? It may happen, it may not happen. And in that moment, I partially felt like I was putting myself out there, but I was okay with what I was saying, because I knew that it was coming from a genuine place, because I've just been through all of this so much at this point that I kind of know where my life is. Well, no, actually, I don't think I know for certain where my life is going, but I know the direction that I'm trying to lead my life. And whether it goes there or not is semantics, but you know, so have you. And the next question was, what will it say on your tombstone? So, for those who are listening who are not Muslim or Pakistani, I would say, normally for our tombstones, we don't necessarily have like quotes or messages on them. At least more often than not, we don't. And I'm pretty sure that's a cultural thing. I don't necessarily think that that is a religious thing. I'm unsure honestly, but so what I wrote down was that I think I would just like to be remembered for who I was in life. So I said son, brother, and friend. And then I want a quote from one of my favorite book series, which is the Latin phrase Ave Atec Vale or Vale. It's in Latin, so I'm not really sure. Which translates to hail and farewell. If you know, you know where this is from. But for me, this I think was just I don't know why it came to me, but it did hit me in that moment that I think I would want this for me because uh, I have suffered quite a bit of loss in my life, and I've become very familiar with grief and loss at this point. So I'm not really afraid of death because death is an inevitability at this point, and there's no telling when it'll come for any of us. It could come for me tomorrow, it could come for you today. There's no telling what might happen. So I think that quote, if you know where it's from, you're going to get where this is coming from. But for me, it's just a reminder and sort of like a promise that your life and, your passing has meaning, and your life just doesn't end because you're no longer here. For me, it symbolizes a bond and a promise to carry you forever from wherever things go from here on, you know? Um, and yeah, I briefly like talked about my past as well. And I talked about how if life is to come to an end and I have my way with it, I would like to be remembered in this sort of capacity because I think this truly encapsulates who I could be and who I would like to be remembered as. Because one of the very painful things that I've realized is that we spend our entire lives thinking that we are well liked, well regarded, and well known. You don't really see the impact of that until you're gone. I have known quite a few people who I thought were just really, like, they were really really big figures in life, and everyone sort of flocked towards them. And then at their funeral, I saw very few people. And then there were some people who I thought were not necessarily, the biggest personalities or anything. But then I saw the amount of people that were there at their funerals, and I was just left awestruck at how many were speaking about them on a regular basis and giving condolences and just remembering them. And I was like, dude, wow, you know? So, unfortunately, for how bleak that is, you don't really know your value per se until you're gone. Like, I think that's when you actually find out what your life was worth in a way. And God, that is so morose and so depressing. But I don't know. I think that's just where my thoughts are leading me on this. And for what it's worth, maybe this is just like an over dramatization of the feeling in the situation, and people aren't necessarily just how many people show up for their funerals. It's more than that. But I don't know. Maybe my view has just been jaded because of how I've seen these things happen, or just the way people have. I don't know. I don't know where this line of thought is going, but who knows, right? Because for whatever we do, we're not going to be the ones who are writing our own story at the end of the day. It's most likely going to be someone else. And if someone else is to write the story, I think I want to leave them with enough context clues on the kind of person I was and the kind of person that I hope to be, that the story comes off as genuine and authentic. Because I want to live a life that's worth. I want to live a life that's worth telling. And I want to live a life that is worth remembering, because I don't know. I just feel as if so many of us spend so much time just doing and doing, but it sometimes just amounts to nothing. And maybe this is just my ego talking, but I want to do something that makes sure that I'm not forgotten, at least not immediately, you know? Like, don't just forget about me as soon as I'm 6 feet underground, you know? I don't know. That's just how I see it. Because I want my legacy to be that I outlive myself. I want my stories to continue beyond me. I want people to continue to talk. I want people to continue to celebrate. I want people to continue to just have feelings and emotions and just things, you know? Life does not end when one dies. Life ends when one is forgotten. And I think that's one of my biggest fears now, just being forgotten. Moving basically halfway around the world for me has opened up more of this fear of just being lost, because sometimes it gets really, really difficult trying to stay in touch with people back home because the time difference is just so exhausting. By the time I get done with class, it's like 10 p.m. back home nearly. And while my day is still going on for a good couple of hours at that point, everyone's either getting ready for bed or is already in bed at that point, you know? So it really limits the amount of time we can talk. And because my days are just so frantic at times and disorganized, it makes it very, very difficult to have peaceful mornings where I can actually catch up with people. And that's if they're not at work or caught up in their own lives. So it gets really difficult trying to carve out time to talk to people, which is just really, really sad. And further just leads into my fears of being forgotten or just left behind, I guess. It's just it's just a little hard, you guys. I don't know. I feel like this is a very depressing episode and might really just bring down everyone's energy. But I don't know, you guys. I feel like I spend a lot of time just making making art just for the sake of art. But there have been a couple of times when I've created art specifically for the purpose of it sending a particular message. Sometimes that message really hits home and it really connects with people. And that is one of the most brilliant feelings I have ever experienced. And sometimes the message doesn't hit as well, and people don't relate. And that leads to the project not really getting received as well as I would hope. And that hurts a little. But, you know, such is life. Unfortunately, that happens. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I think my thing with art has been for quite some time just doing art for the sake of doing art, creating because I can, and just doing because I have the ability to do, right? It may not always be the most elaborate, it may not always be the most polished, but I can do it, so I'm going to do it. But sometimes I do it because I do want the recognition. Sometimes. Like I know there's many of you who might just be thinking I'm crazy and going like, oh, why do you want to be seen? Why do you want to be perceived? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do that? I don't have an answer for you beyond the fact that sometimes it's just cool to be known. Sometimes. Not always. Sometimes it can be a bit much, but sometimes it is really cool to go up to a random stranger and have them say that they have seen your work and that they really appreciate it and that they really like it. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But to me, my art being seen for what it is will always make me feel so full that every other project that may not do well up until that point will cease to matter because that one project did something. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've spent a lot of this episode just saying I don't know and kind of just rambling off. Um, and I think that's okay because I feel like we put too much emphasis on always knowing and always being 100% about everything we do. But I've said this before and I will say this again that this space is meant to be a safe space. It is meant to be a space where you can be vulnerable, you can be open, and honestly, you can even just be wrong, I guess. I mean, I don't know, like, right? When I sat down to record this episode, the only reason I wanted to record this was because of that session yesterday for my class. I realized that I have talked about my legacy in the past, and I want to continue to talk about that because it allows me to just be this version of me in front of you guys that I may or may not otherwise share only like with just like with close friends, right? So you guys will not really see this side of me, and while I don't do it in a way to ask others to open up in the same manner, but I guess it's more so in a way to show that everyone will have multitudes to them, some that make sense, some that don't, and it's okay to accept all these different versions of us because at the end of the day they all make us who we are, you know. And to me, all these different versions of me, all the hope, all the despair, all of it makes up who I am and who I am hoping to be at some point, because it's all just a thing, you guys. I don't know. Maybe this is just going off on too much of a tangent, but I think that my legacy are gonna be the stories I tell and the message that they may or may not give to the people who are tuning in, because that to me is what life is about, telling stories. So I've spent a good chunk of this episode just kind of rambling, right? Just talking without really any sort of logic rhyme or reason. And some episodes are like that. I'm not even gonna lie. There's no plan. There's very rarely ever a script to speak of. Shocker. I know. Um, but hey, this is me. This is unfiltered, often unscripted, and about as real as I possibly can be. I don't know how many of you appreciate that, but if there's even one of you that's actually listening and actually cares for this version of me, then I would like to say thank you. Thank you for having tuned in so far, and thank you for continuing to tune in, because to me, this is, at this point, it's just me continuing something because I want to continue it, and I'm trying to continue it in a bid to be true to myself and the version of me that I hope to be someday. If this podcast succeeds, then that's a win. If it doesn't succeed and I still continue to do it to a reasonable timeline, then that is still a win. If I don't, then who knows? I'll probably pick something else up. But I think I want to just leave you guys with this, right? We all are on different journeys. We all have different destinations. And there's no telling what obstacles we're going to face on this journey. Some may turn us around, some may throw us sideways, some may just throw us completely upside down. And we just don't know what to do. Regardless of what point you are in your journey right now, no matter how difficult it may seem, I hope you know that your story is only going to be what it is because of how you choose to live it. Your story is only going to have the ending that you deserve if you actually fight to give it that. I'm not trying to be like overly poetic or whatever, and whatever I'm trying to do, I'm currently failing at it. But I guess what I'm just trying to say is, don't give up, and just don't let someone write the story that you want to write and have them get the ending wrong. You deserve to have your story end the way you want it to, and have it be the story that you always wanted to tell. The good, bad, and everything in between. You deserve that, and those that know you, and even those that haven't had the pleasure yet, they deserve to know that story. The story that comes from you. No one else. So, yeah, I think that's a good place to end this. Thank you so much for tuning in to this latest episode of Baat Kardi. You can get Baat Kardi wherever you get your podcasts from. New episodes go up on Fridays on your podcasting platforms, and our videos go up on Saturdays on YouTube. So be sure to stay subscribed on YouTube. And if this episode resonated with you, despite all of the ramblings and weird tangents and sometimes just deeply depressing thoughts, please give me a like, and drop a comment down below on what you would like your legacy to be. It doesn't need to be as over dramatic or vaguely in the lines of eloquency that I tried for it to be, but utterly failed in. It can just be a wine liner. It can just be that you want to be succeeded by your children. It could just be the fact that you want to leave some good memories behind for those that love you. It can be any number of things. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you all in the very next one. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.